to another edition of Holding Court with me, your host, Chris Stevens. Let me move this camera back a little bit. As you can see, it is Christmas time around here at the First State Hoops Report studios and newsroom, and that's my tree. It looks a little off-brand, but I had a good time putting the tree up and decorating my home. So hopefully everybody, however you choose to celebrate the holiday season, regardless of your religious affiliation, your spiritual thoughts, enjoy the time with your family. This is the best time of year to just get together, eat, watch football, watch basketball, enjoy each other's company, reminisce on, Christmases and holidays of the past, and get ready for 2023. So hopefully you all are going to enjoy the holiday, those of you who aren't going to be at basketball tournaments and during the next couple of weeks, and just enjoying the time together with your loved ones and getting a break from school for the kids. Lord knows that was one of the main things I look forward to in grade school and in college, was just like, get me away from the classroom for a couple of weeks or a week. Because I know back in my day, we had, I think we didn't get out until the 23rd. I know quite a few schools are probably already calling it a break now for the most part. But back then we didn't get out until the 23rd. And even if New Year's Day was on like a Wednesday or a Thursday or something, we definitely were back in school on that Thursday and Friday. So most times now the kids get a day after New Year's if it's, close to the weekend or what have you. So no judgment. Look, I was just born at the wrong time. Anyway, in this edition of Holding Court, we will talk about our Delaware teams playing against out-of-state teams and why the success there is very important for us here. We'll also talk about First State Hoops Report in another session of New Media 101 with Professor Stevens, where I explain about data and different things of that nature. Also, we have, we'll probably close this out with a farewell to a legendary Delaware coach and a few other topics of interest. I forgot what I had written down, which should let you know that, holiday tournaments. Yeah, I was talking about holiday tournaments at the outset, but yeah, let's talk about the weekend's games that were played by Delaware teams versus out-of-state teams. First and foremost, got to give a shout out to Mark Sills, a Delaware legend, from a legendary family. Of course, his father, Mayor James Sills, was the first Black mayor in the history of Wilmington. Coach Sills was an assistant on the Howard Wildcats team that won states in 1996 when I was a freshman. I'll talk more about that Final Four in a minute. But Coach Sills put together a winter showcase at Howard. It was supposed to be 4 games. It ended up being 3, but it ended up being 3 really good games. St. E's defeated Overbrook. Del Castle hung with Chester High pretty tough, and Howard defeated West Philly High. So shout out to Coach Sills and everybody that participated in that event over the weekend. That was a good thing. 2-1 for Delaware there. Sally's went 2-1 down at the Bullets Invitational. Bullets, of course, is one of the top premier private schools in Maryland for all sports, including boys basketball. Going 2-1 there is a good look. And shout out to Ursuline and Sanford for going undefeated. And let me get my William Reedwood voice together. Shore games. They were 2-1. Ursuline was 2-0 at Shore games, and Sanford was 1-0. And it's very important that Delaware teams acquit themselves nicely against teams from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, the DMV, all points other than Delaware, because it helps kids understand that you don't have to be on the first thing smoking out of here to get exposure. You can still attend school, live in Delaware, and still get seen. I mean, there are at least 5 kids from the schools that I've mentioned that are probably going to get Division I looks. Dallas Pierce has already signed her letter of intent to UMass. Zai Kilgo is probably going to get some D1 looks. Sally's has a few kids like that. Robbie Johnson Jr., Isaiah Henson, Kareem Thomas, Giselle Banks, and Taylor Brown, and all those girls at Ursuline are going to probably get a lot of college looks eventually. You don't have to leave. You don't have to leave. I want everybody to understand this, that yes, there are some, there's some difficulty in playing high school basketball and high school sports in Delaware, because unpopular opinion time, and I'm probably going to catch some wreck from this from the people that are, over top of, us in the media game, those of us in administration, those of y'all in administration, but I will say this because I firmly believe it, is that we don't take basketball seriously because we don't feel that basketball is an important sport enough to take seriously here in Delaware. Delaware basketball is still very much a niche thing, in my humble opinion. Like, we can talk about kids going, to play off in college. I mean, for crying out loud, we've got 2 regular rotation NBA players right now. We have 2 WNBA All-Stars right now. This should be the prime time for Delaware basketball to be promoted and given top rank, among administration in schools and down at the Dover office. And it just doesn't feel that way in some respects. And I'm not saying that people are doing it intentionally. Some may be, but hey, I just feel like there could be more done to promote basketball on a boys and girls level here in Delaware. That's why First State Hoops Report exists. So I just want people to understand that, when you send your kids out of state, yes, you are getting them a better opportunity. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, look, there's quite a few kids that have gone on to go out of Delaware and succeed. I mean, look at Jalen Duran. I mean, he went to Gunning Bedford, but then ended up going to high school in Florida, played for Penny Hardaway a year in Memphis, and now he's a part of the Detroit Pistons future. Didn't play a minute of high school ball here. So it's almost like we can't claim him in some respects, like he was born, he grew up in Newcastle for a little bit, but hey, his parents saw a brighter future for him outside of here and it worked out for them. But again, you have Bones Highland, who went to St. George's Tech, Dante DiVincenzo, Salesianum legend, Elena Deladon, Ursuline legend, Benaj Delaney, Smyrna's finest. That's a pretty good four-person team right there. And they all played every minute of their high school ball in Delaware. So you can make it if you are good enough. Those of us who are in the HBCU realm, obviously I'm a Delaware State alum. I've been watching, the Celebration Bowl stuff with Deion Sanders and all that very closely. I may have some thoughts on that in a minute, but we always say, if you're good, they will find you. They will. AJ English went to Howard, then went to Virginia Union, a Division II HBCU in Richmond, Virginia, tore up the CIAA for 4 years and was a second-round draft pick of the Washington Bullets, and didn't just play. Like, he was a regular rotation guy, but, time forgets that he was a guy that averaged 10 points a game in his 2 seasons in the NBA before going on to play over in Europe. So you don't have – and Terrence Stansbury, the very first. Of course, Terrence Stansbury went to Newark High, went to Temple, played for Don Casey and John Chaney. He didn't win the slam dunk contest. He came in second a couple years. I think it was 87. No, he came in third. Every year he was in the competition. 3 straight years he came in third. 85 came in third behind Dominique and Michael Jordan. 86 came in third behind Spud Webb and Dominique. 87 came in third behind Jordan and Jerome Kersey. I guess maybe 3 was his lucky number in that respect. But Terrence Stansbury, he was the first born and bred Delawarean to play in the NBA. That goes back to 1984. So we're talking about 40 years of kids being good enough to be seen and playing ball here in Delaware. You don't have to go anywhere. But I will say I understand why, because again, a lot of administrations in different schools don't see basketball as something that they want to really put their muscle behind. Like, there'll be sports that, you can set your watch to that'll have like showcasing different things like volleyball, field hockey, football, boys soccer, boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, even track and field and cross country in some respects. We're still trying to figure out when the heck somebody's actually going to build an indoor field house for all of this stuff. Because these kids at the track and field, in wintertime having to go to, Ursinus and New York's Armory and Pennsylvania and having the state championship at the Prince George's County Learning Complex in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. Upper Marlboro or Largo. I can't ever remember because I lived in Maryland for a long time and I used to cover events at the PG Sports and Learning. I just can't remember because sometimes on MapQuest, and this was before Google Maps, tell you how long ago this was. Before Google Maps, you had to print out your directions on MapQuest. There was a thing called MapQuest. You'd plug in where you were starting from. You would plug in where you were going, and they would give you the directions. And there was no smartphones back then. Yes, I'm really telling my age right now. There were no smartphones, so you had to print out your directions and had to somehow keep your eyes on the road and just be mindful of when this turn was coming, when that turn was coming, how many miles you had to go before this next exit or what have you. But yeah, Anytime I printed out directions from MapQuest, it would change. PG Sports and Learn, it would be either Largo, Upper Marlboro, some other random town. I can't remember. I don't think it was Glen Arden or whatever, but it was still strange. That area of DMV just has so much. PG has so many unincorporated spots that you just like, look, as long as we know we there, what difference does it make? By this time, we had stopped doing datelines on stories for the most part, so it really didn't matter. But yeah, having Delaware kids drive upwards of 2 and 3 hours to run track and field at PG County just seems ridiculous. Somebody has to build a field house at some point here in Delaware. I would hope that happens. But yes, we don't have to send our kids off to the hinterlands for them to be great in basketball. We just need people to understand that basketball is just as an important sport as football, as baseball, as softball, as lacrosse, as soccer, as wrestling. I don't know who's going to take up that mantle, but somebody has to speak on it. Might as well be me. But yes, let's let these weekend showings, and hopefully, with the holiday tournaments coming up, we got the Diamond State at Tatnall now, where there'll be some, interstate games. I know Ursuline has a team from New York. I know Tatnall has a team, I think, from Pennsylvania. I think it's Plymouth White Marsh, if I'm not mistaken. I have to look at the schedule again. And, of course, you got kids down at the Shore, down at Salisbury and Princess Anne playing in the Governor's Challenge. And, of course, Slam Dunk to the Beach, where everybody comes. I mean, we've had LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony slam dunk to the beach in a time far in a galaxy far, far away. So you have the ability to be seen if you're a Delaware kid. If you're good, they will find you. And again, going back to what I said last week when I was talking about when I did my little previews and asked coaches about the growth of the game in Delaware, when Taylor Trevisan said we had to grow. We have to grow. Like, if we want to keep kids home, we have to have them understand that, okay, yeah, you don't have to be subjected to second-class citizenship because you play basketball. And basketball still feels very second-class to me here in Delaware. That's just my opinion. For all that the sport has given the state, it just still feels like people don't see it very seriously or don't want to, put the muscle behind it, the powers that be. And that's just my humble opinion. Like, we can discuss it. I mean, I'm not opposed to the discussion, but this is just what I've noticed as a lifelong Delawarean and someone who has observed the high school game here for upwards of 30 years. Just speaking on what I see, which is all I can do. That being said, talking more about the holiday tournaments, I feel like this is a time where the kids can really bond as teammates, because you really don't get to spend that much time together in the crux of the regular season. Like, during the holidays, I mean, y'all done already had dinner with your families and then exchange gifts. You can ask each other, hey, what'd you get for Christmas? Or, hey, what didn't you get for Christmas? Or, hey, how was dinner? Did this crazy relative show up? Did you get some shots up on Christmas Eve or Christmas morning? Did you watch any of the games on TV? This is where, chemistry and camaraderie builds, because you're not in school. And I'm not saying you don't need to be in school to build chemistry. Obviously, you have to be in school to build chemistry, but the classroom element being taken out of it, y'all just hanging out, watching other teams play, it's a good chance for Delaware teams to really, just bond and, strengthen, that teamwork that'll help carry them down the home stretch. And I hope all the Delaware teams, just as Sally, Sanford, Ursuline, Howard, and St. E did this past weekend, pull it together, have a great time, and kick some out-of-state behind. That's what I'm hoping for. I really want people to understand that we can build this game up. We can grow this game and have it be on par with Philadelphia, with central parts of Jersey, with the DMV, with the Tidewater area in Richmond and Virginia, and different places like that, all along the East Coast, Boston, Massachusetts, New England, all of that, New York State, obviously. Delaware kids hoop. We know this. We have two in the NBA, and we have 2 in the WNBA. That's 4. That's more than a lot of, basketball hotbeds in metropolitan areas have right now. It's got to count for something. I just hope that we can see the forest for the trees at this point, because the kids, they know when, they're, being put last in some respects. And I know basketball people feel it all the time. It's like basketball is the only sport that has games like right after school. And granted, I will say I get some of it because of the concerns of what's going on, within the city of Wilmington, or, within, whatever groups or people or kids are having problems with each other. I get it. Listen, I was at the Howard DMA football game when we didn't know what in God's name was going on. I get it. I understand completely. But letting a few bad apples spoil the bunch doesn't do the kids any favors. There's no chance in the name of all that is good and decent, in the name of Dr. James Naismith, are college scouts going to be able to see kids at 4:45. It's just not going to happen, because you got to think, these college assistant coaches and recruits and recruiting, guys and gals, they at their university all day. They still got to be at practice to go over plays, run practice and all of that. And then by the time they're done, you're asking them to hightail it down to a state where it's hard to find a lot of high schools anyway if you're not from around here. And then, you say, oh, the game is half over, or I got here in the fourth quarter, or why am I even here? We got to find a way to get these games back at a decent hour. Some of that is resources, because I know a lot of teachers are called upon to be game staff, and yes, they want to go home too. That's fair. But I also feel like there's a lot of overreaction as to what may have happened at Howard and DMA, or what happened down at Middletown or Apple at the football game that one time. Like, penalizing the kids that are doing right only gives the incentive to the kids that are doing wrong to just keep showing their natural behinds, as my grandmother would say. That's the edited version. So, I think it's fair that safety comes first, obviously, but we got to, find a middle ground, a common ground at some point, that we can get these games at an hour where the kids that are going to be seen and probably should be seen will be seen. Because, Media 101, once again, welcome to New Media 101. Professor Stevens checking in. Did you do your homework last week? Gotcha. There was no homework last week, but there is a history lesson coming here. I've got a few more history lessons in the tuck, so don't you worry. I got quite a few on tap. But just for this week, going back to the days of when the News Journal used to have a morning session, a morning edition and a nighttime edition. You get a morning edition previewing probably what games were on tap for the day. Same thing. Well, actually, you had the morning edition had recaps of the games that happened the night before, and a schedule of the games that were upcoming for that night. And that was also in the evening edition as well, because I think the evening edition, somebody will probably check me on this that's been around a little longer than I have, because the evening edition cut out in 1988. I was six going on 7. So I probably don't have that much of a memory of it, but I feel like the evening edition probably came out around 5, 6, 7 o'clock. I could be wrong. But yeah, back in those days, you had a morning edition and an evening edition. The evening edition would definitely preview or have you give you a schedule of what games were going on that night, because games used to be at night. And not to mention that girls and guys used to have days exclusive to them. Like the girls played Monday, Wednesday, I think Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and the boys played Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, or was it Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? It was one of those things, but like they would have like specific days where it was one day it was the girls, next day it was the guys. And that was, and those games more often than not started at 7:30. Like, yeah, I don't think we're going to ever get to a point where games are starting at 7:30 again. Like, I just don't see that happening, because it's a different time. Like, you get away with having a game at 7:30 at Howard back in the 80s. But because I grew up in Wilmington when Wilmington just started really turning like a bad corner in the late part of the 90s. Like, I get it. Like, there was no, like, I wouldn't ask anybody to have a game at 7:30 right now. I wouldn't. I just wouldn't. It doesn't make any sense, because, you just never know. And it's not even the fact that it's the kids that are playing, the kids that are cheering that are involved in it. It's an element outside of that. And that's probably what happened with the whole Howard DMA football thing. But I want people to understand that we got to, stopping what we do, letting, what's the operative term here? Because I don't want to say what my elders used to say. I'll just say, again, don't let a few bad apples spoil the bunch. I mean, yeah, there are going to be some, folks that cut up and do this, that, and the other, but most of the time, these kids just want to watch basketball. And most of the time, the kids that are playing just want to be seen. That's it. So let's work together and find a way that we can get these kids games at a decent hour, not 3:30, not 3:45, not 4:15, not 4:45. When people are still trying to get off of work and get to the games. Let's find a common ground, y'all. I'm open to discussion as always. Also, that's me. That was my media session 101. That's one part of today's media 101 lesson, new media 101 lesson. Part 2, we can only go off the information we are given. I know there are a lot of kids, players, a lot of parents, a lot of friends of parents, players, and kids, a lot of fans and crews and circles are like, oh, you didn't talk about my friend. You didn't talk about my ball player. You didn't talk about my son. You didn't talk about my daughter. Where's their mention of how many points they scored? Dang, I didn't even know I had something in my hair. I'm sorry. I'm going to tell you why. I'm sorry to get this close. If you need to back your screen up a little bit, you're more than welcome to do so. Back your screen up if you need to. But we can only go off the data that is given. And why is that? Because a lot of coaches don't fill in the website for sports information. That website exists for the sole purpose of updating media and people who can't make it to the games on the status of the teams that are playing, of the players that are playing, what they've done, how many points they've scored, how many points they won by. It's all very important. It's all very important. But that information goes unfilled out. So when you have kids asking, hey, I scored this many amount of points against this opponent, why am I not hearing about this? Why am I not being, talked about? Your coaches left the box score empty. That's what it is. And I don't want to, put this all on the coaches and make it seem like, they're ne'er-do-wells, because that's far from the truth. We got to remember that in this day and age of education being absolutely slaughtered in some retrospects, where you have, this parent, this teacher and coach coaching this, got to make sure, the work gets done in their classrooms. They got to, sometimes feeling as a warm body in someone else's classroom from time to time. Like it's a thankless job right now. Like teachers have the worst of it, and teachers and health professionals, because y'all anti-science people are the worst. I'm just going to go ahead and say that, get that off my get that off my chest. I said what I said in that regard. Y'all are the reason we're still having COVID breakouts. Anyway, teachers and health professionals have it the worst, and teachers and coaches are a special breed, because it takes a lot to oversee hundreds of kids from 7 to 3 or 8 to 4, however, however the schedule works these days. And then try to put together a game plan and a practice for, in basketball cases, we'll say 12 to 15 kids for a game the next day. It's a lot. So I'm not going to say that, coaches are purposely just like, oh, we're not going to fill it out, or maybe it's just not the time, but you got to make time. Because it helps us in the media when we start doing like these all-state things, these player of the week awards and all of that. We need every available piece of data so we can make some serious decisions. Because if we don't have the data, we can't just literally, just put a name out there and say, oh, this kid did this, or we think this kid is good. The facts got to support the name. And that goes back to what I was saying about last week. We don't have the resources in journalism that we did back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even early parts of the 2000s. We just don't. First Day Hoops Report, you're looking at them. Editor, staff writer, photographer, videographer, podcast production manager. I'm a one-man band, literally. And, shout out to the folks at 302 Sports. They do a great job. They have a staff. I've already talked about what the news journals things, news journal staff is like. It's still not what it used to be, because there used to be, I'm going to really tell my age here once again. I remember the time when every instance of Philadelphia sports had a Delaware beat writer, because I can remember it well. Tom Coburn used to cover the Sixers. Ray Finocchiaro used to cover the Phillies and the Flyers. I think he covered the Phillies and the Flyers. I definitely know he covered the Phillies. I think he did the Phillies and the Flyers. And doggone it, I can't remember who did the Eagles beat back in the day. This is gonna mess with me for a long time. Shoot, maybe that was Ray Finocchiaro too. Maybe that was Tom Coburn. I know the reporters used to be at least 6 or 7 deep because Trez was covering UD even back then, even along with the high school beat. The late Gene Bryson, who was my night editor when I interned at the Delaware State News in 2005. He covered everything south of the canal, Delaware State, Wesley, Dover Downs, all of that stuff. You had reporters that were in multitudes back then. You don't have that now. You just don't. It's hard to, be omniscient in this state when you don't have the resources. And that's why we do ask for help with coaches, with, ADs and all that. Like, hey, tell us which players are doing good. What this person scored, how this person hit a game-winning shot. Did they have an electrifying crossover or dunk that you want to share with us so we can share on our visual platforms? We ask for that because we need that, because we don't have the manpower. And again, it's not a purposeful thing. It is the reality of the way the news media has changed, that they've just cut back and cut back and cut back until the cuts are just cut everybody dry. So once again, when if you feel like a player is missing, or you feel like you want to nominate somebody, look, we don't play favorites here at First State Hoops Report. I know the News Journal doesn't. I know Delaware State News doesn't. I know 302 Sports doesn't. We don't play favorites around here, man. We give everybody and anybody who is playing well their propers, and we are proud to do so. So if you want to nominate somebody for a future Player of the Week honor, the email address will be in the description below. You can go ahead and fill that out and say, hey, my friend, my cousin, my son, my daughter, my player is getting buckets. They're averaging like 25. They're average, they scored 34 and hit the game winner. Tell us all of that so we can make more informed decisions. Again, we can only go on the data that is available. We can't just sit here and say, all right, okay, we're going to put this person's name in there just because they're a name. That would be doing the player a disservice. That would be doing our journalistic integrity a disservice. It would be doing the other players who are probably doing well as well a disservice. It's tough. No excuses. We ain't crying over spilled milk here. We do this because we love it, but we need the help. So if people feel like their person is slighted, please let us know. Come with the stats. Tell us that this person has made like their last 24 free throws or made 8 threes in a game, or, because even though basketball is a game of points, rebounds, steals, block shots, and assists, they all matter too. Please fill those out. So that can help us determine just how much of a total package this athlete is and how they could be considered for Player of the Week honors and All-State. We need that help because we just don't have the manpower to just send people out to here, there, and everywhere to see who's playing. Let me count. Let me see, threes. I've seen 12 games in person the first 3 weeks. That's more than I usually take in during a week. I try to make one girl's game a week, one guy's game a week minimum. And if I have the energy for my day job, I'll go find some others during the weekend. That's usually how it works for me. I'm a one-person band. I still have a day job. I still have a personal life. I still have, I just want to chill sometimes at home, we got to have the help. So again, coaches, fill out your rosters. Give us some box scores. Tell us who's doing well. It helps us out a whole lot. And that being said, before we get up out of here this week, I promised myself I was going to have this thing under 35 minutes. I'm getting close because even with some edits last week, it was almost 40 minutes. Oh my God, I never want to talk that long. So I did good with staying on track this week, but I want to say this because when I was recording last week, I wasn't aware that we had lost a Delaware high school legend. And that was made public on Monday that Coach Lou DiMascio, a Delaware legend, all-stater in 1962, cross-country coach, girls and boys basketball coach, had passed away over the weekend. And Coach Lou was one of those people that was just, even though he yelled a lot, shouts out to his nephew Billy. He would tell it, he's like, yeah, he yells all the time. Like he would yell all the time. He was joking about that when a couple of Coach DiMascio's players commented on his status after the family announced that he had transitioned. Coach Lou was a lovable person. I went to Coach Gene Thompson's basketball camps all the time. I went 3 summers, 92, 93, and 95. And Coach Lou was at the 95 camp. And he would just, he would stay on our cases, but he was funny while he was doing it. Like my favorite Coach Lou story was when we had Fran Dunphy, who of course coached Penn and Temple for many years. And Coach Dunphy was obviously identifiable by the bushiness of his mustache. And once we found out that Coach Dunphy was coming, Coach Lou said, you guys are going to really have to pay attention because his mustache could cover my bald spot. We had a good time laughing about that. And I reminded Coach Lou of that when I saw him again when he was coaching Delcastle. And he said to me, you know what? I'm glad you remember that. And you just keep listening because that's going to take you far in life, the ability to listen. And that's one of those lessons that sticks with you. And I mean, we're talking about a guy who, let's not split the facts here. He's going to be remembered. He should be remembered as one of the greatest coaches to ever do it. He won cross-country titles at Ursuline. He coached Val Whiting's first 2 state championship teams at Ursuline in 86 and 87. For some strange reason, when Ursuline wouldn't renew his contract in 87, he went to go be an assistant with Coach Gene Thompson over Wilmington High for the boys, and they won a state championship in 1988. So for 3 straight years in the 1980s, he was a part of a state championship team. 2 as the head coach of a girls team, 1 as an assistant coach of a boys team. He took Delcastle to the Final Four in 1996 with Ryan Smith, one of the best I've ever seen, Jason Snavely, Yusef Garrett, Shante Furrow, those guys. That was a very talented team. I'll never forget going to see the AB game at Delcastle when Howard won the states in 96. That was one of the best atmospheres I'd ever been a part of in my entire life. Just sitting there in the front row because my aunt worked at Delcastle. So she let me tag along with her to the game because my mom wasn't driving out to Delcastle. My aunt worked out there. She was like, all right, just come with me. So, I went, I stayed the whole time, had a ball doing it. And, Coach Lou was just one of those guys that got the most out of his players. And I'll never forget that Final Four because the winter of 96 was probably the longest winter ever because in the beginning of the year, probably around probably like MLK Day-ish thereabout, we had the legendary 2.5 feet of snow that just would not end. Like we literally were out of school for a week and a half straight. Probably could have been longer, but they still cleared the pathways long enough for those of us who could walk to school, walk to school. And we had another little bit of snow during the state tournament. So the Final Four in 96 was actually on a Saturday, and the boys' championship game was on a Monday. So the Final Four was St. Mark's, who, of course, had the legendary shot from Alex Carlson the year before, which made them state champions. It was Alex Carlson and Gene Kelly. John Gordon had graduated and gone on to play at Maine, then transferred to UD. Howard won that game 48-33. That was the nightcap. No, that was the first game. That was the first game, Mac. No, wait. It was the nightcap. The first game was Delcastle, who had won Flight A, versus Cape Henlopen, who was undefeated. And that game, as Chuck Durante, the head of Delaware Sports Writers and Broadcast Association and a historian of great theology, notes, was one of the most strangely officiated games, we'll say, in the history of the state tournament. And everyone just looked at each other like, yo, Cape is getting some really wild calls. And Cape got a wild call in the boys' championship game. I'll never forget that. Corey Clouser was not fouled at the end of regulation. Just wanted to get that off my chest. But anyway, Coach Lou took boys and girls teams to the Final Four. I don't think that's ever been duplicated. If it has, someone please correct me, but I don't think that's ever happened before, and it probably hasn't happened since. No, that's not true. Steve Johnson, the great Steve Johnson, he led St. Mark's to the state championship in 89. He won state championships with William Penn. I think he won a championship with Atlanta at Ursuline. So yeah, but Coach Lou was the first. Steve Johnson was next, but Coach Lou was the first. And he's just one of those people that people just have fond memories of him. I mean, he ended up teaching cosmetology at Delcastle, like a basketball coach teaching girls about, quick weaves and, what's the name of the finger waves and all of that stuff. Barbershop, had the barbers cutting hair and all of that. Coach Lou could do it all, man. And he left such a legacy and such an impact, not just as a coach, but as a teacher. And I hope that his family knows that his legacy and impact will always be spoken of, because as part of our job as Delaware basketball historians and media members is that we keep the memories and the legacies of the people who came before us alive. So I want people to know that Coach Lou was a phenomenal human being, not just a phenomenal basketball coach, but a phenomenal human being. And he will be greatly missed. Sending my love to Coach Bill, Coach Chris, who, chats me up all the time, another great person. Watching Chris coach that Howard team to the state championship in 2013 was like watching Coach Lou at Delcastle. The same mannerisms, the same pleading to the guys, like, why are you screwing with my guys? Why are you referees not seeing the game the way we're seeing it? Like, it was such a fun thing to watch, because seeing Coach Lou on that sideline in 96 looking like, yo, why is this happening to my guys now? And seeing Chris like that in 2013 was fun as well. Like, it was like the apple don't fall far from the tree. I just hope everybody that knows Coach Lou and loves Coach Lou understands that, he was one of the great ones, and that we got to give people their flowers while they can still smell them. We still have quite a few Delaware legends, live and kicking and doing their thing. I know Coach Gene Thompson still works down at Virginia Union. Virginia State, my bad. And a few other, legends around. Let's start bringing these folks back into the fold. Let's start bringing these folks around to tell the stories of how Delaware sports used to be and Delaware basketball used to be, because we don't want to lose too many more greats before we understand what their impact was. And I hope Coach Lou knows wherever he is that his impact will last a lifetime. And that's going to do it for this edition of Holding Court. Greatly thank y'all for watching this episode. If you want to check us out on any given time, just go to youtube.com/@FirstStateHoopsReport. That's all one word. Also, all the ways you can reach us via Facebook, via Instagram, via Twitter for the moment. Oh my God, Elon Musk, what a douche. You'll be able to still find us on Twitter for the moment. All that information will be in the description. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback, the email will be in the description as well. Thank y'all for listening. Please enjoy your holiday season. Hang out with your loved ones, eat some good food. If you're an Eagles fan, you have real cause to be excited right now, because they can clinch the division at Dallas on Christmas Eve. That would be a heck of a gift for Eagles fans. Wow, the Cowboys really blew one today. So yeah, enjoy your holiday. Happy New Year. I think I may do an episode on the 26th. I haven't decided yet, but if I'm not, we'll definitely do one January 2nd. Until then, y'all enjoy your holidays. Take care.